What's good, party people? This is According to Woods, and I have the honor and privilege of talking to hashtag Good Brother. He is the principal host of the Wicked Crazy Pinfalls podcast. He's the one, the only Throwback. Throwback, what's going on, my brother?
As I say on my show, what's good? How you doing?
There it is. There it is. Man, so how you doing? How's life?
On the tail end of having COVID, so that's kind of a good thing. The only thing that stinks is being out of work for a couple of days. With Christmas coming up, it's a little hectic. Life's changing also. Just trying to redo a lot of stuff and just keep busy. So what's good with you, man?
Nah, same. And the holidays are always rough for me. I hadn't liked it since I was probably about 8, which was the last time things were kind of normal. You know, my parents were together and all that jazz. And then we started moving. Like I grew up in the Bay Area, and then after it, we kind of moved from the Bay. We did a stint in Fiji, where my mom's from, Indiana, where my dad's from, Las Vegas, New Mexico, Georgia, and then Inglewood in '95, not knowing jack shit about gang stuff and whatever. Walked out the house, with like a Sonic the Hedgehog t-shirt, thinking I was cool, and I wasn't in the right neighborhood to do so. My cousins, who I didn't think gave a shit about me before, they were like, snatched me by the gruff of my collar, were like, "What the hell are you doing, dude?" And I was like, I don't know. I was trying to be cool. So I've not been a fan of the holidays since I was about 8. And then to make matters kind of even more grim, my dad passes away on Christmas back in 2010, a massive heart attack, and then my mom, December 4th, brain aneurysm. So the holidays are rough because, like, every time I hear Christmas carols, I just get transported to the time the doctor were like, "Hey, it was everything that we could do," but unfortunately, they didn't make it.
So for me, it's more so a few other things. I lost my mom to cancer and stuff like that a couple of years ago. So it's rough. Other than that, with everything changing around here, it makes it a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
So it's just, one day at a time kind of thing. I've lost my touch with Christmas for the most part with the holidays. Like you said, certain things trigger it. Like for me, watching Polar Express, because it was one of my mom's favorite ones, triggers it. So, but with everything, a new door closes, a new door opens eventually, and that's what's been happening. So, it's going to be fun this year, hopefully. But at least with Christmas, it's just different. So.
No, 100%. Well, my condolences to your mom. That's always it's always rough and makes when it's almost a traumatic experience. At least from what I feel when people are like, "Oh, I have to go see my mom," and or deal with my crazy in-laws or whatever, because like my wife, she doesn't get to do that, man. It's just wild. Like Christmas can mean different things to different people, and it's just kind of universally accepted. Like, oh, it's the most happiest time of the year and whatever. But to a select few, maybe more than a few, it's not the jam.
Yeah, but you get through it. It's a process still. My dad's still alive. He's 71, so it's interesting to see what happens. But this year it's going to be a lot interesting because I'll be in like different sections of the state. So it's just one of those things you just deal with.
Yeah, man. Sometimes keeping busy, it definitely helps to get your mind off of things. But also another thing that keeps your mind off of things is the wrestle stuff, and the things that happen between the squared circle, between the ropes, or in the instance of Josh Barnett's Bloodsport, maybe no ropes at all. So Throwback, how did you get into pro wrestling?
It's interesting because it was my mom. Actually, no, it was my cousins. Because I'm old enough to remember Saturday Main Event on NBC, where the original one. So the story goes is that my cousins are older than me. I have two older cousins who are 2 years, and I think Lee is 5 years older or something like that. And they wanted to sneak out in the middle of the night because it was one of those things you weren't allowed to watch.
Mhm.
And so they, instead of making me cry and all that stuff, they grabbed me out of bed and pulled me in there and pushed me down. And there we are, 4 years old, watching Saturday Night Main Event, not knowing what to do. 3 years later, at the old Garden, my mom took me to my first house show and stuff. And I used to be able to go to house shows and stuff like that because a friend of mine at the time, his dad would buy tickets, but had an extra ticket all the time. So they would take me. And it's been like that since. A lot has changed, though, as of the years. I don't go to shows anymore because of neurological. I became epileptic in 2018. So I got lucky, though. I got to see some wrestling shows, but I had to be working in a concession stand where I worked in a local arena. It's been there still, but they would put me behind the glass so that way it didn't trigger anything and stuff like that. So I was really lucky. So, but it's just, one of those things that just happens.
Wow, that's rough. And you never really take to account that, some people can't. I mean, their experience with wrestling can be different. I mean, to a very, very lesser extent. When Kane would come back out, when he was still wrestling, and they would just out of nowhere, there would be the pyro that go off, and like I literally had my youngest son when he was a wee young lad literally shit himself because it scared the shit out of him.
For me, though, my best memory of it all was in '98 when they opened the arena. It's the Songs Arena, named after Paul Songas, a great senator from Massachusetts, from this area. And there they are. And you can actually find the picture online of they dedicated for a week the street that the arena's on to Stone Cold Steve Austin's Way. And there's a picture of him in front of the arena with the sign and stuff. And then it's my first day working there. And there I look up and there's Austin power walking right across in the arena right in front of me. And I'm just like, that's the only time, because of working there so much, I was starstruck. Like, I've seen major stars perform there, like concerts. Um, like Christina Milian, I was stuck in an elevator with her, and it was just like, whatever, there's nothing, no big deal and stuff like that. I got to go to a private fan signing, like one of those things where for Linkin Park, they do a huge concert. Well, they don't do it anymore because the radio station's not around, but they used to have something called the Big Field Day, and they would have bands come in here. So I got to get signatures, talk to people and stuff like that. But that was the only time, the whole time I worked there for a long time, where I was starstruck. Other than that, I just was like, these are just normal people doing a job.
Wow, that's funny. That I mean, Stone Cold, man. He's Stone Cold Steve Austin. That's a once in a generation type talent, man. And it's funny because my first job was at Hertz Rental Car at LAX, and I was reading a Pro Wrestling Illustrated around the time, and I walk out like it was my lunch break, and then I kind of like walk out just to kind of get a breather, and I see coming towards me this dude, and that walk is unmistakable, right? And he goes, "Hey kid, what the hell is this?" And I'm like, "Oh shit!" And he was like a gold member, right? So essentially, they get their ticket and they can drive off the lot. That's it. Everything is all waiting for him, whatever. But he likes to have, or at least at the time, a Mustang drop top because he hung around the beach cities, right? And for some reason, and this kind of dates it, there was a white hardshell Daewoo. Those cars with the shitty cars with the awesome sound systems. Yeah, a Daewoo there. And he was like, "Can you fix this?" And gives me his Texas driver's license, and I'm all like, "Oh shit!" So I run to my manager and I'm like, "Can we fix this?" And I show him his license and my PWI, and I was like, "Whatever." And he was cool with me ever since. He even signed said PWI, which I don't know what happened to it, but yeah, man, Austin is Austin. He will never ever stop being Austin.
Yeah, and for that point, for me being a teenager, I was starstruck. There was only another time. Like I said, that was the only time, but actually, I just thought of it. Um, the where I do for work, I interact with a lot of people, obviously. Well, the one person that's from nearby, that's from Stoneham, Massachusetts, is an Olympic figure skating gold medalist that got her knee taken out.
Ooh, Nancy Kerrigan.
I'd be working on her car and I'd be talking about the services and talking to her, and she was the nicest person ever. Like, she came in for a light bulb one time and she's like, "Do I have to pay for you?" And I was the assistant, and this is just not supposed to be told, but I was like, "Yeah, you got to pay $10." And she paid the $10 and stuff for the bulb, but then she gave me a $20 for taking the extra time just to do like tires and stuff like that, the small things. But it's just, you get those people in there and you're like, wow, these guys, you expect like them to be all hardcore, high earth, and there's some of them are really humble and down to earth.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, the ones that are kind of jerk facey are the ones that are probably like Instagram famous or whatever. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but there's just levels to this shit.
Yeah, it's interesting to say the least. And now I have a list of people I'd love to have a sit down and have a conversation doing all this, but some of them are too high of an end. But I've been lucky with my stuff because we're getting closer and closer to 2 years, May 26th, this coming year. And I've been really fortunate enough to have a good group of people that come on a regular basis. And there's certain people that I would love to have come back again and just talk to them again. Like, Sean Ross Sapp, I've had early on when I first started doing this. Sean's a great person and stuff like that. I wouldn't mind doing it again because of what happens is that when I did that show, my internet dropped twice. So it literally, I was using not StreamYard at the time, I was using OBS, and it
Yeah.
dropped twice. And I was like, I'm so sorry, Sean. So now, like, if you look at the channel, there's two versions of it. But I've done stuff with Sean in the past too. I was like, I did a prediction show with him. I've done like one of those, like a couple of things and stuff like that. I've been very fortunate. But a great one person that's in the community I would love to talk to is Denise Salcedo and stuff like that. I've been really fortunate to have a good amount of people on there. You know, this week coming up, Love Wrestling Zone, Spencer Love is supposed to be coming on, and I might try to get Parrish on there too. But it's been very, very fortunate. I've been very blessed with doing this stuff. I've met a bunch of people and stuff like that. Like Joe Pearl, Jeremy Lambert, stuff from Fightful, a lot of other people too. Some people in the area like Ed Fry, who's part of Love Wrestling, JPJ's from this area. So it's very fortunate enough to do so. Now, is it possible to meet Denise Salcedo? That's kind of like, that's like a once in a lifetime thing. I mean, one of the people that have helped me through this is Sean and Rob Wilkins, but also Warren Hayes at the start. But we've all been doing our stuff, and eventually, what will happen is that you never know, something great could come out of it. But that could happen in the future, but it's not in anything that I'm hoping for.
I hear you. Yeah, my kind of belief is shoot for the moon. Even if you fall short, you land amongst the stars. That's one of my favorite sayings. So, I mean, to cast that reel, as far and wide as you can, and you never know what you come up. You know.
Yeah, and I'm very excited to see everybody's success too. I mean, especially with like Rob Wilkins, who's a good friend. Through a lot of stuff, Rob will check in and stuff like that with me, and him doing all the stuff he's doing for Fightful and a lot more. He had his own show for a little while called In the Mix with Rob Wilkins on the sister station that we have called Wicked Crazy Pinfalls TV. Not Wicked Crazy Pinfalls, Wicked Crazy Television. So I mean, you could find it; it's out there. but there was a really good shows, and it's just if things happen, he wasn't happy with it, and I would love to do more stuff with Rob. And to me, I even though it was hard times at that time with the way things were, I thought it was an amazing thing, and he was doing a really good job. And I'm so happy for what he's doing now. He's got a new thing on Fightful Select with Maggie. So I got nothing but respect for both of them. And Maggie's been on a few times too, a lot of times, and I'm just excited to see what both of them are going to be doing for Fightful, and I'm so happy for both of them.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Now, IB Rippingham says, you can never escape my finishing move, the farting head scissors. Because, fool, when I got you in the leg scissors, I'm farting like crazy. You'll be begging me to let you go.
That's the best way to wake up in the morning right now, considering it's 10 Eastern here. 10:30 right around. But for me, if that ever happened, literally, I would freaking punch him in an area you're not supposed to punch him, because that's easy access. But here's a good question. What would be your finisher if you were in the ring?
My finisher would probably be something that involves a butterfly suplex. I remember the first time that I saw Lord Steven Regal hit that in WCW. I think it was WCW Worldwide, and I was just like the wrestling. To me, that's one of the most visually stunning, And I mean, if you do it, you can hit it in jiu-jitsu and you can fuck some people up. So for me, it would be something involving a butterfly suplex. It would be butterfly suplex into something, but yeah, maybe that. I mean, it's probably not. Nobody would want to take it, but it's that butterfly suplex into like maybe the knee, something like that, like almost powerbomb fashion.
Rikishi did a move, and I used to pick that as a finisher at the end in some of the video games when he was on there. He did a wrestling move where it was a pop-up cutter. He would literally
Yes,
launch him up in the air and give him a cutter. And I would love to do that and see the reaction of everybody as a finisher, and then just figure it out. When I was playing horsing around with friends, it was like a modified dragon sleeper suplex. Where you get them in the dragon sleeper, you lift them up over your shoulder, and you still have it, and you drop them down. And literally, because of the fact that they would be out cold halfway through, you make them shake up and wake up, and you get them back into it. So it was
whoa,
like putting your body in shock. So my buddy's like, I did that one time to him when we were kids, and he's like, that's literally called the shock maker, because your whole body feels like it's going in shock.
oof, that
But
is
I did it right. I did it a good way, because you're holding that person up on your shoulders, even though in that way, and you're dropping them on their back and then lifting them back up to get into submission. I would always have, because my hand would be underneath, I would have their hand behind their back, just to give them more cushion. So that way, when I get close, I would still go back a bit. I wouldn't get it tight, though. I'd keep it loose enough so that
yeah,
way, if something went wrong, they can push off.
yeah, wow, man. The consideration that you're given, it's amazing because you you just want to destroy your friends.
No, I wouldn't do that, because I did that one time to somebody. I did a tombstone power driver to a kid, and I miscalculated and got him on the crown. Another time I was doing the bonsai drop, and I caught the kid wasn't in the right spot. And at that time, I was like 10, 11, and I was roughly around almost 200 pounds, about 5 feet tall. Yeah, I was a heavy kid, but now I'm like, if I could do that now, being 40, I wouldn't be able to, because right now I'm 275 and 6 feet. So it's just like, that's a lot of weight coming down on you. I wouldn't want to do that to anybody.
Yeah, have you seen those deals with Yoko where he would just like obliterate the enhancement talent and just land on their heads?
Yeah, I did. It's interesting. He's very sorely missed too. He's a really good wrestler and everything too. It really, I think for a big man, he was like the man of all big man.
No, 100%. Oh, it was weird because my mom, she watched wrestling of old. She caught a little bit of the Hawaii territory, The Rock's grandmother's territory on TV, but, didn't really follow the WWF era that I came into. But her favorite wrestler was Yoko, and we'd have arguments, me and my mom, and I'm all of what, 7, maybe 8, and it's all like Yokozuna's Japanese, I would say. And she's like, being a Fijian woman, she'd be like, no, he's Samoan. And I'm like, no, he has the thing, and he comes out in the salt and whatever. And she's like, no, he's Samoan. Mom, you're right. uh, BJ Darden says, my boys, better known as the franchise player Bad Blood, Double B. Shout out to you, good sir. And Reed Eblan says, happy holidays, fellas. Hope you're feeling better. Throwback.
Like I said, going through everything, it's a process. COVID really, really sucks. It really does.
Yeah, 100%. Too kind. Adam is the king. No, that'd be you. And also Jimmy the King. Oliver Platt from Ready to Rumble, which I believe is dropping on one of the streaming services. So you can get it for free. So just saying. So Jimmy is the king. Jimmy King. Just saying. Which I gotta ask you, right? I just kind of dropped the Ready to Rumble deal. Do you have a favorite wrestling movie?
Actually, the wrestler, I seen that, and Mickey Rourke did a really good job. That's one. One of my favorite non-wrestling ones is The Fighter, obviously from being in that city from Lowell, but and it's all that stuff's a true story too. So I mean, that's something. But wrestling wise, wrestler is one of my favorite ones. So just because of how it predicts, older when they get older, how everything's a lot rougher than it is. The one I hate the most is Ready to Rumble with David
Re-
Arquette.
really?
Yeah, I think it's hokey. It really is. It makes the WCW wrestlers then look like a freaking not really strong. It just makes them look like they're just not really good actors and stuff like that. I mean, some of them are better actors and stuff later on, but um, wrestling talent wise, anything The Rock does, obviously being WWE legend, it's just it's gold. So I'm excited to watch what he does with Black Adam eventually.
Yeah. I happen to be a Black Adam, but not the one that The Rock is playing. So, spoiler alert. That's The Rock is not playing me. So don't want anybody to get confused. And BJ Darden says, I have a question. What is your Mount Rushmore of indie wrestling and why? And I believe that is you. Good
Is that
throwback.
and the question is that all time indie wrestling or is that current? Because I'm not in touch mostly with the indie scene right now. Um, all time, so the one that's on the top of the list just because, and there's two of them because they're homegrown talent, and I'm not talking about Hunter and stuff like that. But there is a promotion in this city that's part of Massachusetts is called Chaotic Wrestling,
Yes.
and for me, the top two ones that stand out right off the bat when I think of it is Mercedes V, and that is known. Her name now is known as Sasha Banks,
Mm.
and I didn't get to watch her wrestle in Chaotic, but the stuff she did, like she wrestled in a ballpark here in Lowell. A lot of the stuff they did was around the Boston area mostly, but um, her promos that I've seen on YouTube and stuff was great. Kofi is from this area too, so those are the two. I mean, Tommaso Ciampa wrestled here, so I think that would count, and stuff. If I could see one person wrestle, it would have probably been Hunter because Hunter is from a town not close from here, so in New Hampshire, Nashua. So I mean, that's four. I wouldn't pick Cena. I don't. Cena wasn't a wrestler at that point. God, there's so many good ones. Um, but I know somebody who used to wrestle it for Chaotic a little bit, and was part of the tag team on there. So it'd be my buddy Derek too, just because of the fact that how good he was. But for overall, there's one other thing I'll throw out there. And there's two of them. But one person I've seen his match recently. The other one I'm going to see is our buddy the franchise. I'm going to see that, find a YouTube video. But I've seen Chris Parrish's stuff, and I am really impressed with him. Love wrestling's Chris Parrish. So I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing stuff he does, and I'm hoping eventually when everything goes back to some sense of normalcy, he comes into the States and comes for Chaotic and goes after their belt eventually. You know, we need a belt collector in the indie scene, and I think he is probably the one that could wrestle for like Impact or, something like that eventually when he's ready and he wants to.
No, 100%. That's a pretty good list. And Mercedes V worked with Bad Blood in Cali, so that's awesome. And he says it's for the both of you. So I mean, I'm casting a wide net, obviously, in terms of like indie talent that I used to read it, in the PWI 500 and what have you. To me, especially what they ended up being, um, top two is they got to be Danielson and Punk, right?
Yeah.
Danielson's run with Chris Hero, right? They toured everything. You kind of see the stuff that they did now in almost GCW, right? Where they'll do a hardcore match, they'll and whatever, but it was just those two guys doing it. So like that to me, Punk is one of them, and I would say, you know what, Punk. I'm gonna go Punk, Danielson, Colt Cabana, because obviously, you talk about indie spirit and whatever, the Art of Wrestling podcast. He was really the first, almost like Rogan is to just podcasting in general. And even though he wasn't the first, like Cabana was one of the people who brought it into prominence before a Cornette or Jim Ross or Bruce Pritchard or Court Bauer, even, like, so he's that. And then I'm actually going to go for the fourth and final slot. I'm going with definitely, it's a she, and she deserves to be out here, but Mercedes Martinez. Like, I mean, the WWE didn't know what they had. A huge missed opportunity is, just her and Shayna Baszler just wrecking shit. That's what I wanted to see. They're, very kind of similar in terms of presentation. Obviously, Shayna has the MMA background that Mercedes doesn't have. But to me, if you don't tell me that Mercedes Martinez deserves to be one of the best and brightest indie talents that has ever lived. I mean, 20 years in the indies. Like, good God, So Mercedes, that's me.
Yeah, for me, being Sasha, it's just some of the stuff I watched from Chaotic too. Like, though she didn't have like the bank statement and stuff like that, but she was really good, technically sound at that point. Being a former Chaotic Women's Champion,
Mhm.
she literally had a I Quit match, and the way she finished it, she grabbed the rope, the cords for the recording, and put it in the person's mouth and made them submit. Like some of her early stuff, it showed how much passion she had for it too.
Wow, that's yeah. I mean that's a pretty cool deal to do on the indie scene, man. Like
Hmm.
that's it. And to see shades of what you would see, almost like going back to Stone Cold. What you saw in terms of his ECW promos. I can't make it in the WCW, but Eric, please take me back. Please take me back. So it's cool that she was showing shades of it even in Chaotic, which I mean, Chaotic. That's man, that's a place that I got to read about. With names like what was it? John Watt. It was a John Walters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
like I said, Tommaso came through here and stuff like that. Believe it or not, a lot of people don't know, and I think it was covered in the documentary WWE did with Kofi. He's a freaking three-time amateur wrestler in Massachusetts. He won that amateur wrestling title three times, and the record still stands. It's interesting to see who went through Kowalski's gym and just the litany of talent that's gone through there too.
Yeah, I mean the was Matt Bloom a chaotic guy?
I believe so. I'm not
Yeah,
100% sure, but
yeah,
like so many people have gone through there, it's ridiculous.
yeah. And for those who don't know, Matt Bloom, head trainer at the WWE Performance Center, better known as Albert, maybe even Sentai. Oh, I mean,
Yeah, a lot
yeah,
of names, a lot of names.
a lot of names, absolutely. And have you seen my trophy case? LOL. I am the belt collector. LOL. Two LOLs, but he says 5 titles in counting, and agrees that
Am I still up here? Well, I don't know what's going on. We're still going on, so I'm taking it he froze. So, um,
yeah. Are you
there
back?
you go.
There you go. My internet's went all weird. It's
I'm like, what's going on here?
yeah. But yeah, so Mercedes is definitely there. Now, in terms of, you're able to see a lot of wrestling live. Do you have a favorite, match or event that you went to live?
That there's so much when I got to and when I was working. If I could have, I wish to this day, and I still hate that the fact that I never got to see Balor Joe here in Lowell when he lost the title. But I think Sergeant Slaughter and Hulk Hogan at the old Garden, they did a match. It was the one my mom took me to. It was the first time I ever been to a wrestling show. That was awesome. That was a house show. Um, I never got to see a live taping or anything like that. You know, I worked through one when they did Monday Night Raw in Lowell one time, but I never got to sit and actually watch it. Um, Favorite match just of all time. It's a lot of people's favorite match, and that's the Hell in the Cell with Foley and Taker. And it's just because of there's certain factors dealing with it outside of the match. It's not the match itself, but reasons why. We had a boiler fire at the house with my mom's house that we grew up in and stuff like that. We were living at a family member's house, so I convinced my uncle to watch it with us, and he flipped out. But my mom wanted us to shut the TV off when Foley got thrown off and stuff. We did a match memories, which basically is like a review show, and we did one with Wild Boy and Rob Wilkins, right on my mom's birthday last year. So I mean, it's on the channel for people to check it out. So
Yes, and the links to the channel, the Twitch streams, and everything is right in the description below, so you don't have to look too hard to find the great content of Throwback and the rest of the gents. But talk to us about the podcast. Like, how did that start? And just because it seemed like everybody started a podcast in 2020 thereabouts, but you've been going strong for 2 years, so you actually predate it. So how did the idea of the podcast come up?
I was my boss at the time because I was the assistant at where I work. His name is Xavier Arcado. He was like, dude, you have the gift for gab. You can basically make people buy stuff, and the saying, you make shit seem like it's $1 million afterwards, and you can make anybody talk about it or buy it. And I have always been comfortable enough to talk to people, even if it's people I don't know. So like Mr. Warren Hayes like reached out, says, hey, you seem like you're a generous person. You want to reach out and do stuff. Why don't you come on the show and we can talk about wrestling for a bit? And that was the first show I've ever done. So I was talking to all three of them, Rob Wilkins, Sean Rossap, and Warren. And literally the idea came about between me and Rob because Rob Wilkins was starting to develop his own stuff too. And I was just like, you know what? Why don't I just listen to people and get it on there? So the podcast originally started as a review show for the week, and it started just like I am so like very intricate in a lot of stuff. I would go excruciating detail about everything, give my opinion about the matches and stuff and its stuff. And it got to the point where starting to set up each different show, because that's when AEW wasn't around and there was just NXT and stuff. I would literally say move for move and say it. It got to the point where it just was too taxing and stuff. So the idea of doing roundtables opened a lot of avenues and stuff like that. So I started doing that stuff. I opened to audio for a little while, just on Anchor for a bit and stuff. And it's not being used right now, which is sad because there's a lot of stuff I could do with it, but it's just time wise. I don't have the time to get that up and running. But it started out having a round table with Wild Boy, Hannah Moore, and Rob Wilkins, and then it just progressed on to, on the audio, on the visual side, and it's the way it is now. Every week we have somebody different that might come on. Usually it's the Week of Crazy Crew that's on, which is Anakin JMT, Aaron World Order, or Aaron Entertainment. We had Pluggo on previously. He was one of the original people, but he's now with Love Wrestling. We've had so many great people. We've been very blessed on it. And then now we're doing a tournament to crown a community, not show. Like a lot of people have a community champion where anybody at any time could actually go after that belt.
Wow, that's a pretty interesting concept. Now, are supporters of the podcast in play? Are they booked in the title tournament?
Yeah, we've actually had a lot of great people. Ron Patel, who did No Profanity September for Fightful one time, he's on there. Aaron Entertainment, Anakin JMT. I've had Dennis Farrell from Wrestling Perspective on, and he's part of it. Maggie, Big Money Drew, Jeremy. We had a triple threat match where we joked around and called it the destruction of the distraction, and it had JJ, Rob O'Neill, and Jeremy Lambert on there, and it was great fun watching them do a prediction show and stuff. We've got a match where we're trying to set it up so there's multiple people on it and stuff. It really is a treat when you get people in a room and have something at stake and say, hey, why don't we just make a prediction show and have nothing at stake for it? Why not we just up it and make something worth it? And yeah, it's a belt. It's a 4-pound belt. It's a light belt, and it's well worth it to give somebody an extra oomph and be like, I gotta make sure it's right. In the tournament, though, we've had a lot of ties recently because a lot of people have been thinking the same things. So we've had 300 or 400, 100% predictions on it and stuff. And the first one was from a person who's calling themselves, because they want to be anonymous, the king of all worlds. And literally, it's something to see. Like in the other couple ones was Steven Jensen, who's part of Fightful and does stuff for Fight Talk, and you should go check that stuff out. And then JPJ also had 100% too from Love Wrestling in Between Two Beards. So these guys are amazing people. We're going to rework the brackets, and we're going to kick back at starting it up at the Rumble, and we're going to culminate it with the second night and crown a champion. And the idea is anybody at any time can come after that title, and that title, it has to be defended within 90 days. So there's multiple pay-per-views, but that belt has to be defended no matter what. It's not like, oh, I'll give you the belt and we don't predict it and it just goes back and forth. No, this is going to be anybody at any time that wants a shot at it can get at it. So
That I mean, that's a way to kind of keep it whole, right? And almost, you know what, Jack Tunney, in terms of how you're booking this, would love this because what was it, like a 30-day, right? 30-day, the
yeah,
unofficial WWF kind of rule that you have to defend your title within 30 days, which they don't do too much anymore. Or if they do it, they don't promote it as such because they gave real stakes, right? So you're giving real stakes to your legitimate championship.
yeah, and it's fun because like anybody at any time can get it. So like we're gonna do an undercard for Mania 2. It's in the works. We're gonna have a number one contendership on there for that first one and stuff like that. It's going to be fun. It's something different, and it gives people a lot more fun. It's like you and your buddies doing fantasy football, except this is actually a real title. It's actually sitting up in my closet right now and stuff like that. It's looks awesome. You can check on the Twitter page, and you could actually. It's a long way to scroll down to find it, but it's there, and you can see pictures of it and stuff like that. So then what we're going to end up doing is rebracketing because of the fact that the certain people have requested certain matches. So just to make it a lot more juicier and stuff, I'm going to give them what they want. One of the matches that somebody wants is a triple threat match between Dennis Farrell, Rob Wilkins, and Big Money Drew, because Drew Nicholas had this persona where he was the tribal chief and all the stuff of Wicked Crazy Pinfall. So, but he dropped that because, well, you know, he lost to the King of All Worlds. So it makes it fresh, it makes it different, and it you don't hear many people who are that generous enough to put that out there. For the title itself, there's rules to it. After the 90 days, if you lose the title, you have to put your own money into it a little bit, and you have to ship it to the next person that has that title, because I can't fund shipping costs all the time. So it'll be fun. Originally there was a plan to have a trip and give the person the first one a title and stuff like the Triple H thing, but you know, circumstances have come into play recently, so I just can't do that. So
No, 100%. You know, and that's I mean, that's wrestling booking, right? That's what happens. Circumstances happen that you know, kind of prevent an original plan from playing out, which Bad Blood says, I want a shot. He
well,
says, let's go.
yeah, he's always allowed to get a shot.
He wants to add it maybe a 6 belts to his belt collection as of right now. So yeah, man, there that's a fun one. Which, speaking of fun, what I mean, obviously, you know, not being able to attend live shows or what have you, but what is piquing your interest in terms of the wrestling world? And I often tell people there hasn't been any more money in combat sports. You can call it boxing, you call it pro wrestling, call it MMA, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, what have you. There's never been more money in combat sports, right? And specifically pro wrestling. My goodness, you got AEW. Unfortunately, Ring of Honor just went out of business, but New Japan making more and more sojourns here to the US and North America, right? There's a whole lot of wrestling. GCW is literally, I mean, almost theoretically bringing back the territory system where they can do death match one night in one seaboard and then, you know, completely and utter, like Josh Barnett's Bloodsport, pure wrestling and what have you. So, what wrestling are you watching right now? What piques your interest?
As sad as to say, I was a long time WWE fan. I wouldn't go anywhere. But because of Raw and some of the products dropped off, I was heavy in NXT. I love the original NXT. This 2.0 stuff, it's okay, but it's not as great as the original. And they shouldn't have rebranded. They should have left it alone. You know, if they were so against ratings as they say they were, and it doesn't matter, you wouldn't focus on Tuesday nights as much. Um, I I was a fair weather AEW fan But with Danielson and Punk getting in there, I'm more interested in it. So like watching, being a part with the franchise and stuff like that on Wednesday for winners here, winners coming, or something like that. I can't remember the titles of shows sometimes when you're getting older, your mind starts slipping. But I started getting more and more into AEW. So tonight I'm gonna watch Rampage and then see how it goes. And you know, yeah, I'll try to catch some live shows on television. If not, I'll just watch it on Hulu and stuff like that. Um, I I still get some glimpses on YouTube of Impact and stuff like that periodically. I think Impact literally has, and everybody argues with me about this. I think Impact has the number one women's division in the world. With the talent they have, the stories and stuff like that. I think that more so WWE originally. Obviously, they have an amazing women's division itself across the board. But if you had to compartmentalize every individual aspect, when the original NXT was there, when they weren't releasing people and stuff, to
Yeah.
me, that was going to be the one B women's one. They were literally close enough to actually get on the heels of Impact, and then Vince or whoever the powers may be just decided to get rid of a lot of people. And it's sad. I think for me, the biggest release of the year was Bray, and
Yeah.
Bray just not. Everybody will look at it from a performance part, but I think for him being very creative, whoever gets him, whether it's Impact, New Japan, or anything, AEW, and literally has a gold mine creatively with him and stuff like that. But for me, more so, it's just, it's sad to see NXT the way it was. And for WWE products, I even was on a pedal. I thought the UK brand was a lot better with Kylie Ray. I thought it was, the second best women's division and stuff like that. So a lot of people argue with me is like in the NXT, both NXT brands are 1 and 2 in WWE. Well, SmackDown at that point wasn't that great, and Raw obviously was just you know, horse crap. So I mean, it's just really difficult to see where they're going to go from there. AEW now is picking up. Um, I was telling a friend of mine that if there was no Forbidden Door with WWE, I would love to see like Britt Baker versus Charlotte, or even better yet, have Bailey versus Britt or something like that. Just have somebody who's like one of their top tiers, or even Alexa, and let them just rip it.
Yeah, well, I mean, if anybody was kind of booking a fantasy match with Ruby Riot, now Ruby Soho, you can, because like, you know, the way that Nick Khan is running roughshod through the talent relations aspect of the WWE, you could see that in about 90 days. You know?
I mean, for me, I think the match that I would be more interested in AEW to be more invested in, considering she's now the women's belt collector for the most part, would be Deanna versus Britt. And you could
Yeah.
build that up as like a double or nothing main event pay-per-view. Now, for me, I don't pay for pay-per-views. I'm not one of those people that borrows somebody's login and stuff like that. So I try to catch it up obviously on YouTube and stuff. But I would love to see that match on television after having a match what we just had on Wednesday night. That would
Mm.
be the main event quality and stuff like that.
No, 1,000%. And to talk about, you know, missed opportunities and what have you. But you know, they had Deanna Purrazzo. They had her. WWE did. They let her go. And look what she's doing. So I'm just
Yeah,
saying, WWE doesn't always get it right.
nobody gets it right. It's just, I think Deanna eventually will go back and then tear it up eventually. Not anytime soon. I think she's going to go the Drew route and get as many belts as possible just to get the craft. I think when she was in NXT, she was just on the cusp of being where she is now, but I think she tapped into it when they let her go and took that chip and made it bigger and made it better. So hopefully, they do something different and make it a lot more interesting. She's done it. I mean, she's doing an amazing job, but I would love to see her in where she is now, going against like Alexa at her peak, or certain things. So we'll see. I mean, time only can tell. WWE has deep pockets if they want to, but obviously they're not.
Yeah. Um, Bad Blood says you can join us on Rampage if you want. Which they do a Rampage watch along. So just keep putting that out there into the ether. Now it's wild because the WWE, right? And it's weird. I'm wearing a WrestleMania, sweater, but it was literally the first thing I could find. So there's that. There's no allegiance there. There's actually been less of an allegiance with me and the WWE product. But where do you see the WWE in 2 years' time?
I've been listening to the Q. Have you been listening to the Q3s, like the Q calls,
No,
financial calls?
I'm a stockholder, but I could not bother with it.
For me, I listen to that when it happens, just because I went to high school and I had a marketing thing at a technical high school, so I'm interested in that stuff. Periodically, it reaches my peak, but the way it sounds that Nick Khan is planning to do everything, and his business background, it seems like he goes in there, dismantles everything, and the company sells to something else. I think in about 2 or 3 years' time, WWE will still be WWE, but I'm going to throw a name out there, and I've been throwing this out there. I wouldn't be surprised if ESPN Disney puts a shot at, WWE, but I honestly think the company that would buy them already has one of their, partially their rights to it. And I think NBC Universal would take a shot at buying a major amount of stock off of them. Now, the question is, who would be running it at that point? God forbid Vince passes away and at some point, but I literally feel like Vince doesn't know what he's doing. I think Hunter should be running the company. They're more looking at the financial aspect of the social media and stuff rather than looking at the whole talent pool around. And a lot of these people they let go, it's sad because a lot of them right now in certain parts of their brands are suffering at some point. And a lot of people between that 18 and 40 demographics turning off the TV off. I think Wednesday, and I've argued this last night on Wicked Crazy Pinfalls, is that having that hour match, and I think I did this too, and Bad Blood could actually let me know. If they had, the squash match with Wardlow on Wednesday first, and then, and planned another squash match just to cushion it, and then the last two matches at the end of an hour. I think if you booked that Danielson Hangman page and put it in between 2 hours, like between like let's say 8:30 to 9:30, right? And that, or if you move like the Serena Deeb match at the beginning, and then get rid of the Wardlow and let them. I as somebody who pays attention to programming ratings, I don't pay to Nielsen, but when people publish it on Twitter, I'll pay attention to them here and there. I think a lot of people after that first hour, when the ratings came off, turn the TV off, and a lot of times, because that was pretty much the only match a lot of people wanted to see. So, which is sad because a lot of people who turn the TV off, the casual fan, probably didn't keep it on and watch about a couple of good matches and stuff in there on the second half. But if you put that in the middle, the meat of it, people would start getting into it and they would turn it on. I mean, look at WCW back in the day. That's what they used to do.
Mm-hmm.
They take one of their main event matches they would have on one of their shows, and they would put it in between two parts of an hour, and you would be stuck going back and forth between Raw and WCW to get to see it. And if you saw the match you wanted in WCW in the middle of it, Raw would have to contend to that, and you would be stuck going back and forth, back and forth. So, I mean, WWE thinks their sleep is their competition. So obviously, their ideas and ideals are out of whack.
Yeah, it's not for a wrestling fan base, and that's what you were saying about Disney and Universal. And when I say Disney, obviously ESPN is a part of that. They were in the running when they had the whole TV rights fees and all that jazz and what have you. But they eventually stayed in one instance with Raw and NXT. They went. They stayed on NBC Universal or USA, right? And also via the Peacock Network, literally gave the entire tape library, at least the rights to it, away for a pretty sizable sum, right? And then so the reason why I kind of think it, I think Vince's coup de grace, kind of tipping the hat to Finn Balor, right, is he wants a physical Hall of Fame belt, I think, right? Just kind of an ode to his father and what have you. And the two places that you can do it are both in Florida, but those are Disney World in Orlando, and I believe also in Disney World is I'm sorry, also in Orlando is Universal Studios Orlando. So
Yeah,
they've got placial. They don't do it in LA because Universal Studios Hollywood is literally up atop a hill. There's no more room, right? And the same deal, like to make Star Wars Land in Disneyland, they had to kind of do away with another part. So they don't do it here in California, especially with the state tax or whatever. But you go tax free, go to Florida, where WWE has set up their posts or during COVID, production any damn way, and most of their talent is there anyway. I think that's where you do it.
yeah. Eventually, hopefully it'll change, but you never know. I mean, if Hunter gets the reins, it'll be more emphasis on the wrestling aspect of it, but only time will tell. I mean, the way it seems like with these financial calls and stuff like that, there's absolutely like no help because there are more looking at the branding of other things rather than just focusing on their production and the TV and the talent and stuff like that because they put their minds and bodies at risk and
Yeah.
eventually something's going to happen. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised in 10 years we're talking about wrestlers being unionized because there was talk about that with the Screen Actors Guild trying to back them up, but I wouldn't be shocked that that actually happens at some point.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's just a weird one. But yeah, Nick Khan is the closer. Whatever's screwing with the WWE within the fact that he rose to power so rapidly, right? To kind of oversee like a Michelle Wilson or George Barrios who got ousted from the company pre-pandemic, and the fact that he is Vince's right hand man, it tells me it's going to be sold probably. I'd say Mania the year after next. A Mania
I
next.
don't think the whole company is going to be sold. I think a vast amount of their shares on the stock market is going to be taken over because it's a publicly traded company.
Yeah,
So what I
there's
mean being sold, maybe about Vince is going to be 50-50ing it, or they're going to take a good chunk of it off the stock market, which gives them the right to be in the boardroom to make decisions.
Well, the thing about it, I think Vince owns around, I think, close to 60% of the company and the shares that go along with it, right? And then there's it gets kind of scattered there, and I would actually say even 55 when you cut in Stephanie Hunter if Shane still has a piece of the pie and what have you. So, but I mean, it's almost a similar situation with GameStop. What ended up becoming the GameStop, where the guy from Pets.com literally bought a shit ton of shares, during a time where GameStop was probably trading at $2 a share, and then this whole kind of like internet hacky thing, what have you, and we now have GameStop at $150 a share as of right now, but it got as high as 300. So yeah, I mean, I do see either Disney, the conglomerate that is Disney, or NBC Universal buying up a lion's share of the shares, but that would also entail Vince giving up a lot of it too.
Never know what could happen. Anything's possible.
anything's possible in the WWE, which is the old trope. But Throwback, obviously, you've come a heck of a long way from being just a fan watching on Saturday night's main event with the cousins to where you are now. Uh, let's get some shout outs out of the way.
I mean, for me, I think the biggest contributors is the Wicked Crazy Crew. And like I said, there's a good amount of people in there. We got a show chat and stuff like that. So Maggie, Rob Wilkins, a bunch of people and stuff. Jim Sloan, um, you know, we had Pluggo from who was one of the original people I had on there, who was wrestling perspective, but now he does stuff for Love Wrestling. Drew Nicholas has been on there and stuff like that. Tim and Joel in the ring, have been on there. Multiple people and stuff. Um, but I think the one person that I need to thank the most besides Rob is Sean and Xavier and Warren, but mostly Sean, because Sean would literally tell me what I need to fix and stuff like that. So outside of it, just family and friends and stuff, just pushing me to get through this. There's been a lot of doubt through the last year or so, wondering if this is worth it. If that always happens, but like Anakin, JMT, and like Aaron being there and stuff like that, it's well worth it and stuff. You'll Ray Callahan, who's sorely missed, who's doing his own thing, not wrestling wise, but just in general in life. He's sorely missed. He was literally the voice of reason. So if Ray's watching, dude, we miss you, man.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Shout out to Ray and the rest of the crew. Now, speaking of the crew, for people that want to find out about the podcast, and again, I've linked all the socials and the links to the podcast, but I've done it once, but it bears repeating. Where can they find you on the socials?
To do what Ray Callahan knows, you could find and Anakin, you could find me right here. Throwback 978 on the Twitch. Also, same thing on Twitter. It's, we also have, we just changed the URL, so hopefully it kicks in and works. We do a show every Thursday night, but there's talks about changing the dates, just because of the fact of scheduling and stuff like that for everybody in the crew. Just look it up here on the YouTube search and just put Wicked Crazy Pinfalls. It'll pop up. But usually, if it's not the old RL, which is youtube.com throwback 27, try the 978 at the bottom, next to it, and you'll find us. It's not that hard. Like I tell people, I'm not that hard to find. I mean, it's not hard to find a 6'2", 75 person walking around. So I mean, if you look at the description and stuff, go check out the people that are in there and stuff like that. We have you guys at Body Slam, so bodyslam.net on there too, and just some people that I think are very important that people should follow too on there.
That's absolutely brilliant. So again, go ahead and subscribe to all of the Wicked Crazy podcasts wherever you might get them. And again, they are in the link below. But if you're in the mode of subscriptions, if you haven't already done so, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe to the According to Woods podcast on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. I mean, Throwback, you're subscribed to the podcast, aren't you?
Yeah, I am.
Heck yeah. So be like Throwback. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe to everything he's doing. But if you don't believe me, don't believe Throwback, and I don't know why you wouldn't, well, here's Zeta Zhang to help convince you.
Hey, this is Zeta Zhang. Make sure you